A new power play is unfolding in the Middle East, and it comes with a price tag. U.S. President Donald Trump is proposing a post-war Gaza order where influence isn't negotiated, it's bought. $1 billion for a permanent seat at the table, and Trump decides who gets in. As ceasefire talks stagger forward, Gaza becomes the arena for a radical new peace experiment. According to Bloomberg, the Trump administration is floating a controversial idea, a Gaza Peace Council, not symbolic, not advisory, a governing body that would shape Gaza's post-war future with one extraordinary condition. Pay more than $1 billion and your seat becomes permanent. The draft charter lays it out clearly. Member states serve a maximum of 3 years unless they pay over $1 billion up front. Those contributors bypass term limits entirely. In effect, money buys longevity and leverage. This is not a UN council. Trump alone decides which countries are invited. Each member gets one vote, but every decision still requires approval from the chairman, and that chairman is Donald Trump. Meanwhile, in Cairo, a Palestinian technocratic committee has quietly begun work. Its job, basic governance, public services, and stability for over 2 million people. The committee is led by former Palestinian Authority official Ali Shaath, but it will operate under a higher authority, a board of peace chaired by Trump. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas remains fragile. Key questions remain unanswered: international security forces, Hamas disarmament, enforcement. The political architecture is being built even as the ground remains unstable. Peace here is provisional. This is Trump's gamble, that cash, control, and centralized authority can succeed where diplomacy failed. Supporters see decisiveness, critics see pay-to-play geopolitics. Either way, Gaza's future is now tied to a very Trumpian formula.
So my impression is that Hamas is not disarming, they're rearming. It's my impression that they're trying to consolidate power, not give it up in Gaza. It's also my impression that Hezbollah is trying to make more weapons.
A fragile ceasefire, an unfinished deal, and a conflict refusing to fade. As world powers debate the next phase of the Gaza agreement, Hamas is issuing a blunt warning: the war is far from over. With diplomacy stalled and violence continuing at a lower intensity, the risk of a wider explosion is growing once again. The Gaza agreement, signed in October, was billed as a turning point, a path towards de-escalation after months of devastating war. But months later, even the mediators admit there is no clear roadmap for what comes next. According to Hamas officials, neither Palestinians nor the countries overseeing the deal, including the United States, have defined steps for Phase 2. What exists instead is a fragile pause in fighting, marked by near-daily Israeli strikes and limited humanitarian access. Speaking to Dropsite News in Doha, senior Hamas Political Bureau member Hussam Badran delivered an unambiguous message. He said the battle did not end with the agreement, and that Hamas does not view the war as a military defeat. Badran stressed that even if Hamas were to disappear, resistance would continue, driven by what he called decades of occupation and denial of Palestinian self-determination. For Hamas, the deal is political, not a surrender, and not the end of armed resistance. Behind the scenes, negotiations are largely being conducted between Washington and Tel Aviv, with Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey acting as intermediaries. Hamas officials say they are briefed on developments, but are not active participants in shaping the outcome. Meanwhile, Israel continues operations inside Gaza and the West Bank, actions Hamas says undermine the agreement and push the region closer to renewed conflict. Since the deal came into effect, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, most of them civilians, according to local health officials. At the heart of the deadlock is Phase 2, a stage that includes proposals for disarmament, governance changes, and the deployment of an international stabilization force. Israel and the United States have pushed for the full demilitarization of Gaza. Hamas has rejected that demand outright, calling it a demand for political surrender rather than peace. The group says any long-term stability must begin with an end to Israel's occupation, not the dismantling of Palestinian resistance. Badran issued a stark warning. If Israel's military campaign continues, and if the United States fails to compel Israel to honor the deal, a third Palestinian intifada could erupt. He said growing Israeli assaults and settlement expansion in the West Bank are fueling anger far beyond Gaza. Hamas officials argue that calming the situation without addressing Palestinian political rights will only delay a larger confrontation. They insist the Palestinian struggle is about sovereignty, not aid, reconstruction, or temporary relief. Regional mediators are now racing to prevent the agreement from collapsing. Arab and Islamic countries have resisted participating in any force tasked with disarming Palestinians, warning such a role would ignite further instability. Instead, they argue that any international presence should focus on enforcing the ceasefire, not reshaping Gaza by force. With no consensus on security, governance, or reconstruction, the future of the deal remains uncertain. As leaders debate frameworks and funding, Hamas is signaling that time is running out. The group says diplomacy without guarantees will not end the conflict, only pause it.